And inside the shrine is his severed head. To my channel, and you join me in Drogheda, or some people call it Drogheda. I think the locals call it Drogheda. Whichever way you pronounce it. I'm in Ireland, in the town of Drogheda. I call it Drogheda because that's what I was told to call it by my Irish friend, and it's a delightful little place. It's actually stopped raining. It's been chucking it down all last night and this morning. But behind me is the River Boyne, and River Boyne actually lends itself to the name of a battle that took place here on the 1st of July 1690 between the forces of the deposed King James II of England, it was King James the 7th of Scotland, and King William III, future King William III, William of Orange. And it was a victory for William III. Went on to become William III. There's actually a battlefield just about 1.5 miles, 2 miles to the west of where I am. It's absolutely lovely here. Behind me is the viaduct, the Drogheda Railway Viaduct, and that leads out into the Irish Sea. But in this video I'm going to take a walk around the town to discover some of its history, including a severed head in a church. Yes, you did hear that right. I found another severed head on display in a church, and this is most exciting to see. So we're going to see that a little later on. Head up to Millmount, which is the castle, and discover some fantastic history along the way. This Barbican is known as the St. Lawrence Gate. It was named after the Priory of St. Lawrence, which once stood just outside the gates. And it stands east-west facing here in Drogheda. Most of these impressive gatehouses face north-south, but this one faces east-west, so it has a good view from attackers who would come up the River Boyne, up the estuary, and up the river from the estuary. This is a fine example of a 13th century gatehouse. You can see the arrow slits, windows, and also where the portcullis would have been as well, just above my head. This must have been one very impressive structure in its day. There's a little diagram on the information plaque which actually shows what the gatehouse would have looked like when it was built back in the 13th century. And looking at the illustration, it does look very impressive indeed. But now let's walk a little further up the town and check out another tall structure. So interesting seeing the gatehouse there, Barbican. I think Drogheda's lucky to have that Barbican still standing. There used to be 10 entrance gates, Barbicans into the town. That's the only one that actually remains. There's a section of wall there as well, which is interesting to see. But yeah, remarkably well preserved. I've seen other gatehouses that haven't survived. They've just been ruins. That one really is impressive. But just up here is a monument to the man who invented the submarine. And as it's raining, just started raining, it's probably quite apt and fitting that we talk about something to do with water. But hopefully not that much water to need a submarine. But there we go. So let's just walk up here a little further and try and find this monument. This building here is the Scholars Hotel. It used to be the Christian Brothers School, and before that it was a monastery. What I've come to look at is the monument just on the right hand side here, because it's to a man called John Philip Holland, and he's the man who invented the submarine. He did indeed. He was an engineer who developed the first submarine to be used and commissioned by the United States Navy. It was called the Holland 1 submarine. And he also invented the screw propeller, the auto dive mechanism, auto ballast, and visual indicator. Whatever that is. There's a lovely little plaque here to John Philip Holland, and just underneath is a little model of his submarine that he invented. It's absolutely wonderful. The very first submarine he invented was called the Fenian Ram, and that's actually now on permanent display at the Patterson Museum in New York, in the United States of America. But that's the monument to John Philip Hammond, the man who invented the submarine. What a lovely hotel this is as well. It's absolutely delightful. Just been in the hotel for a cup of tea. Oh, it's absolutely lovely in there. And the staff are so friendly and chatty. Absolute pleasure to go in there. But it started raining again. So I've put my umbrella up this time to keep myself a bit dry. One thing the staff did show me in there was the ceiling in the restaurant. Two lovely round ceilings in there, painted murals on the ceiling depicting the Battle of the Boyne. That really was absolutely lovely to see that. What a focal point of the restaurant. And there's so much history inside the hotel as well. Beautiful oak panellings and a rather nice bar as well. But just up the top of the road here is the Magdalene Tower. So let's go and take a look at that. It stopped raining for a few minutes, which is quite nice. It's been raining on and off all morning. But just here is the what remains of St Magdalene's Friary. Priory was founded around the year 1224 and fell into disrepair after the Reformation in 1541. There's a little marker here underneath the arch of the tower to all those who were buried here in the grounds. Just walk through effectively the cemetery. All those who died between 1224 and 1540 who were buried in the grounds of the monastery here are all commemorated by this marker here, this Celtic cross. And you can look up and see into the tower, standing directly underneath the tower. Yeah, it's quite interesting to walk around it. It's quite an unusual usual monument. I haven't seen one like this on my travels, so it's quite pleasant to take a look at it. It's in remarkably good condition, given its age. as was the St Lawrence Gateway. Very, very good condition. It's nice to see it preserved. Really rather interesting. Really rather interesting indeed. Well, let's head on into town and see what else we can discover here in Drogheda. This is the Anglican Church, part of the Church of Ireland, and this is dedicated to St Peter. And it's quite nice because the sun's suddenly come out as well. It's like the weather forecast for this afternoon was right. Let's hope the sun stays out for the rest of the day. This is quite a beautiful church. It's been a church here since the year 1230, but back in 1649 the forces of Oliver Cromwell assaulted Drogheda, and this was also the scene of a mass slaughter. Around 100 people had taken refuge in the spire of the church. It was a wooden spire, and Cromwell's forces burnt it to the ground, killing everybody inside. Total unnecessary destruction of human life. Sadly, I come across quite a few stories, similar stories from history, and some stretching back to World War II as well. Absolutely despicable acts of mass murder. But the church fell into disrepair after that, and by 1710 a new church was being considered, and that's this church here. It actually dates from 1752, and it's quite a beautiful church indeed. But what I've actually come to see here in the graveyard is a particular type of gravestone. It's just up ahead. This gravestone is known as the cadaver stone, and it's quite an interesting one. It represents Sir Edmund Golding and his wife Elizabeth Fleming, and it shows two cadavers. It shows what the inside of a coffin would look like years after a person had been placed in it. This type of tombstone explored the bodily decomposition and human mortality, and this was once quite fashionable in Europe, although to see something in Ireland really is incredibly rare indeed. And it's quite an interesting stone because it really does depict what a cadaver would look like. You can see the chest cavity of Elizabeth Fleming opened up, and there's the depiction in stone of a decaying person. Really is absolutely fascinating to see that, and very rare as well. It's the first one I've actually seen. I know there are others in churchyards in England and in Europe, but to see a rare one here in Ireland really is very special indeed. But let's head on a little further and see what we can discover in the town, and make my way to the other St Peter's Church, the Catholic Church, and to see a severed head which is on display inside the church. ahead is the Catholic church dedicated to St. Peter here in Drogheda. And it's this church which is actually the reason I've come to Drogheda, because inside is a shrine to a man called Oliver Plunket. And inside the shrine is his severed head. So let's go inside the church and take a look. What a beautiful church that was inside. Fabulous stained glass windows and just amazing architecture as well. What I did enjoy seeing in there, what I came to see, was the shrine to Oliver Plunket. Now, he was the Catholic Archbishop of Armagh and Primate of all Ireland, and he was the last victim of the Popish plot. Now, the Popish plot was a fictional conspiracy by a Protestant priest called Titus Oates between 1678 and 1681, and it gripped the kingdoms of England and Scotland in anti-Catholic hysteria. Oates alleged that there was an extensive Catholic conspiracy to assassinate King Charles II. There was no plot, it didn't exist, and many people were accused of being part of this plot. And over 22 people, innocent men, were executed, including Oliver Plunket, who was executed at Tyburn on the 1st of July 1681. And he received the worst punishment that the state could actually give out. He was arrested and tried several times and eventually found guilty of spreading the Catholic faith. But he was still executed, and he was drawn, hung and quartered. He was drawn on a sled behind a horse to Tyburn. There he was hung by the neck until he was half dead. Taken down, and while still alive and still fully conscious, his private parts were cut off. He was disemboweled. His limbs were cut into 4 pieces, and as he drew his last breath, his head was severed. And his head is here in Drogheda for all to see on display. And just across the way from his head is the cell door at Newgate Prison in London, now the site of the Old Bailey. And his prison cell door is there in the church as well to see. Fascinating object to see inside a church, as well as Oliver himself. Behind me are the gardens here, the car park by the side of the church, and there's a statue there of Oliver Plunket as well. This is only the second severed head that I've actually seen in a churchyard, in a church. The first was Simon Theobald, Simon of Sudbury. He was Archbishop of Canterbury back in 1381. And he was dragged out of the Tower of London and beheaded. And his head is actually in the vestry of St Gregory's Church in Sudbury. I'm very eager to find some more severed heads in churches. If you happen to know of any, then please leave a comment in the comment section below and let me know. It would be fascinating to see them and to tell their story. short walk from the town, up the hill, and I reach Millmount. And you can see the mound from the Motte and Bailey Castle that was originally built here back in 1172. But it's quite an interesting place to walk into. There's a museum here, there's a tower, and we'll see what else there is to do here as well. But labelled up as the cultural quarter. So let's just see how cultural it is here and look at the historic sites. But you can see the mound over to my left, and the tower that's upon it. Well, let's take a look at the museum, which is just on the right-hand side, and then head up and look at the tower and the views over the town of Drogheda. Wow, that museum was so interesting, especially the collection of old telephones down there. Very, very interesting indeed. And the painting on the wall, which shows what Drogheda would have been like about 900 years ago. Absolutely brilliant. I've also been up the tower as well, the Martello Tower, and had a wander around up there, looked at the little museum and followed the tour guide. Really interesting, absolutely brilliant, and well worth a visit here. This is also the location where Oliver Cromwell is said to have massacred about 2,500 people on the 11th September 1649, part of his second assault on the town, part of the English Civil War, which actually spread over to Ireland. Interesting reading about that. But what a beautiful place this is. The actual museum building itself dates from 1814, I think the tour guide said. And it's a former British army barracks, and it's just absolutely lovely here. It looks like a film set. Just hasn't changed, I don't think, since it was built 200 years ago. Absolutely fantastic. Top of the mound is the Martello Tower, and that dates back to 1808. It was built as a precaution against any invasion from the French. It's very unusual to see one this far inland. Normally they're on the coast, part of coastal defences, and there are many good examples in England, especially in Essex and down towards northern Kent. But it's lovely to see that. A nice little museum inside as well. So but I've enjoyed my second day here in Ireland. First day yesterday in Dublin, and the second day wandering around Drogheda. Tomorrow's my final day, and I shall probably spend it in Drogheda. There's a few things I want to look at, and I just have a quiet day before heading back to the airport. So I shall leave you now with some pictures which I've taken from the top of the tower, overlooking the town of Drogheda. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and follow my journey, and I'll see you tomorrow for another adventure here in Ireland.